Laura, good afternoon. Thank you so much for taking the time for joining me on the podcast today.
Hello, Josh. Thank you for having me on your podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. I say good afternoon, and that is correct with where you are in the world right now. You and I have been connected for a long time, but we haven't had much chance to interact yet. And you are somewhere in Europe, correct?
Yes, I live in London. So here is just afternoon, so it's 3 p.m. 3:30 p.m. So almost kind of mid in the afternoon. So where are you? Is just started the day, so it's quite weird, but nice.
And is London like how long have you lived there? Are you from there? I guess what does the city mean to you?
I'm originally Italian, so I come from Sicily, Catania, Sicily. But I moved to the UK like more than 10 years ago. I started studying here for my PhD, and then when I finished the PhD, I remained for a job. So initially, I moved to the northern part of the UK. I lived in Nottingham, and then I moved to the south in London. So it's now 4 years that we live here. So yeah, basically we bought a home. We It's our permanent residence. But me and my husband, we live and work here. So yeah, but it's kind of nice. So it's our life now. So we feel home. And the weather is not like the nicest compared to Italy, but we get used to it. So yeah.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question. Actually, if there ever was thoughts about returning to Sicily, because when I picture Sicily, I picture sunshine, water, ocean, and then of course, I lived in England for a year. I don't know if I told you that yet, but it was cloud cover for most of it, and like
Yeah.
during the fall and the winter, the sun sets at like 4:30 in the afternoon. So there's quite the contrast there.
Yeah, that's pretty much accurate. Accurate. So yes, now it's very cloudy, but it's quite kind of warm, I would say. I say that the weather's changed during the last couple of years. It's getting warmer and it's getting kind of feeling of summer, which it wasn't like a few years ago. But of course, the contrast with Sicily is like enormous because I come from a highland which is like summer pretty much all year round. So it's like, oh yeah, this weather is nice. But yeah, I return usually once or twice a year to visit my parents. So I'm coming soon. Actually, in a couple of weeks, I'll be there. Um, so yeah, looking forward actually to a little bit of sunshine.
Now, I'm going to throw a little bit of a curveball question at you because I just thought of something. So, with Sicily being a Mediterranean, uh, well, not country. Well, wait, hold on. Sicily's not its own country, right? Or is it? It's Italian, but it's like its own like state. Is that how it's kind of broken down within Italy?
Yeah, it's the one of the main islands. There are two big islands. One is Sicily, one is Sardinia. And they have like a regional government, but they are still parts of Italy. Of course, there is like regional, but the main state, of course, is Italy. So all we abide to all the Italian laws and anything like that. So, but of course, with the region, we have like some kind of regional law. We are like a little bit more independent, but still part of Italy, of course. So you don't have like a Sicilian state. There was in history, but now not now.
Gotcha. Oh, okay. So, but as I was saying though, like I've been to a few countries that border the Mediterranean, and I noticed for whatever reason there's a lot of cats like everywhere. Like in Morocco, cats everywhere. When I was in Israel a few years ago, cats like everywhere. Would I experience the same thing if I were to go to Sicily today? Like, would there be like a lot of cats just like roaming around too? I don't know. That just seems to be something I noticed with Mediterranean, countries.
I'm not sure. Maybe in the villages, like in the main city, I wouldn't say it. So you can find a lot of stray dogs sometimes. But if you go maybe in the small village in the hinterland of the island, maybe you can find some stray cats as well. It's not that as much as like Greece or any like other countries. I've been also in the Middle East. There were a lot of cats everywhere. Not that popular, but yeah, you can find them. But we have big cities anyway in Sicily, so it's quite rare to find stray animals anyway.
Gotcha. Now moving to London, because London is probably one of my favorite cities that I've traveled to. And it's also really big and there's so much to do. I've been there on three separate occasions, and every single time I visited the city across those trips, I've always had something new to do, like each day. Like I don't think any one particular day had either like very little to no like repeat occurrences, I guess I would say, or like revisited sites or what have you. There was always something new to do. So going to London and moving there, what were kind of sort of your initial impressions of the city? Just like places that you saw, or maybe some highlights that you had. Like, what do you kind of remember when you first visited London for the first time?
Oh, I visited London for the first time more than 10 years ago. It was like a student. So I really wanted to go. And the feeling when I visited for the first time is not the same as I visit now, of course. So I was like, everything is so amazing. I want to live here. Of course, now it's like slightly different. But there is still, because it's so huge that you cannot feel it like you've seen it all. So every time you go, I don't live in London, like I would say central London. I live like more in the external part. So every time I go like to more the central part, it's always have the feeling of being a tourist because there is always something new, some neighborhood you haven't seen before. So the kind of feeling still remains, but it's not the same as like visiting for the first time as a student or as like a teenager. The feeling is gone, but still nice to see it. There are some neighborhoods that, of course, like normal tourists that go for a week cannot experience because they tend to focus more on the attractions that are famous, like Buckingham Palace or the Tower of London. So, of course, this neighborhood I like more if you live here. So it's nice to see them. Or there are like, I don't know, weekly markets that they do only certain days of the week. So you cannot go, of course, if you're a tourist and you have like 3 days or 4 days, whatever. So it's nice to have the possibility of living this type of experience as well.
So you went to school up in, did you say Nottingham? Is that where you went to school?
I did the PhD in Nottingham, yes, at the University of Nottingham. But my master degree was in Pisa, so in Italy. So I lived in Tuscany for a few years, and then I moved to Nottingham because I had a scholarship.
Gotcha. Okay. And you decided to study medieval history. I'm assuming, is that medieval history just pertaining to the British Isles or what?
No, when I did my master degrees, it was general medieval history, so it was more focused on Europe and Italy. But then when I moved for my PhD, I had like a project that I wanted to carry on. So the project was really focused on history of travel, um, and in particular from traveling from Venice to the Middle East, of course, in the Middle Ages for religious purposes mainly. So yeah, this was my focus of studies during the last couple of years. So yeah, when I finished my PhD, I finished a thesis regarding this topic.
So pilgrimages effectively is kind of what you're studying.
Sorry, what did you say?
Pilgrimages, is that what you were studying?
Yes, yes.
Oh,
So
okay.
mainly pilgrimage and also commercial travels. But yeah, when you people were traveling in the Middle Ages, the curiosity of tourism didn't exist, or if it was existing, it was covered by a layer of religious purposes because they couldn't express their curiosity. Was a sin expressing curiosity towards like other cultures or habits. So everything was under the religious purposes for traveling.
Gotcha. Now, going for your PhD, because I've made it up to the level of master's degree myself. I went to the University of York and I got my master's degree in field archaeology from them. And I'm not sure yet if I want to go for a PhD in my field, mostly just because I feel like it would be a soul crushing endeavor, 3 more years of schooling, lots and lots of money, lots of research and, having to write your thesis and doing like this, that, and the other. So going through that yourself, what was kind of sort of your mindset? Like, what did you kind of like go off of to kind of get you through that? Because I know so much of that must not have been easy.
No, no, it wasn't at all. I remember when I started and I got my scholarship, my mentor was like, I have to warn you, PhD is like a very lonely job. So you would be on your own for most of the time, researching in places with no one, in libraries, archives. So you have to get like that spirit of wanting to carry on. So, and to me, it was actually exciting to visit all those libraries and places around Europe to follow like my itineraries. But of course, when it comes to the writing part, it's not that fun. So, especially also as a blogger, I always write when I have like inspiration of writing something. So, if you don't feel that kind of like a passion, it comes like down sometimes. So, you really need to stand there and say like, oh, I have to write like, I don't know, 3,000 words today. So it's not that easy, especially also when you do like conferences and you present your research. You confront your results with other people, so some might disagree, some others are like might be like more aggressive. I'm not sure if you ever heard about the medieval congress in Leeds, the World Medieval Congress. This is like the most aggressive place you can present your research. So to me, it was very good. Like I always had like nice feedbacks, but some of my colleagues have been completely destroyed, so it wasn't that nice. But yeah, it's like yeah, it's a long, long way. Even if it's 3 years plus, like maybe one extra year for writing or waiting for your like viva, it might get like very stressing as well.
And also, I think it's really tough being a student in this day and age. Well, especially because like there's a lot of distractions out there. I mean, it's like yes, you may have to go online to do research, but what's also online? Social media, YouTube, and all this other stuff like that. And I think that's why I really like what you mentioned about going to the libraries and digging into actual like paper, hard copy archives and things along those lines too. So it's just did you have any strategies for that side of thing to like try to cut out the distractions? Because like at the same time, like you mentioned, you were also blogging, and I'm sure a part of you wants to just like put more work in your blog versus the thesis or the research or whatever the case may be. So how did you kind of go about managing distractions during all of this?
Oh well, there are actually a lot of distractions, especially when you like don't have like a proper job. Let's say that someone say like, oh, you have to do this from 9 a.m. to 5 a.m., but you are like kind of free. Because I had of course my scholarship, but I needed to present results as well. But I didn't have like that person who was telling me, oh, you have to be here at 9 and you leave at 5. So I couldn't do whatever I want. So I think I always planned myself like in advance for my research. So I knew that for some months I needed like 1 month in Venice to study and another month, I don't know, in central London to go to the British Library. And then I needed the rest of the time for writing up chapters or like at the beginning you don't actually write chapters, you write more like essays to present to your supervisor. So then when it feels that they are pretty good, you start like drafting them as a chapter of a thesis. So at the beginning, I wrote like more lots of papers and lot of like ideas I had. So then when I was researching and getting what I wanted from the archives or like finding new papers, then I drafted the chapters of the thesis, and then it was kind of like sitting there for hours and writing. So sometimes I did like there were also my other colleagues that were doing other PhDs as well. So sometimes we did like focus group, like putting the timers for 40 minutes writing, then 20 minutes like doing something else, like taking a coffee or a walk. Yeah, so yeah, to prioritize things, and it depends, of course, on the research you're doing. So some, for example, my husband was in the lab because he's an engineer, so he was doing like a different type of research. So of course, more scientific is like different types of exercises and writing. Mine was like more research in the archives and then writing after. So yeah, but yeah, you have to organize yourself.
Well, spoiler alert, of course, you ultimately did finish your
Yeah,
PhD program and you are actually Dr. De Stefano. I probably
yeah.
should have, introduced you that way just to be all official and stuff. But so you did make it to the end of this journey. Well, you made it to the end of that initial goal, I'd say. I mean, obviously, your journey of like researching history, I'm sure, is going to be a lifelong pursuit. But at least getting to the end of your academic career and ultimately finishing and turning in your thesis, completing the program, getting your doctor designation, just what did that feel like for you, just to know that you've been all this work you were putting in had paid off and you ultimately did reach your goal? Just describe that feeling for us.
Oh yeah, it was amazing. I couldn't believe it when I finished the thesis and it was there like presenting it at the university. I was like, oh, it's done. Now what I do? So yeah. But also because it looks like it's like very quick, but when you submit your thesis and before it gets approved and like you have your viva, some months comes in the middle. So for example, I remember I presented the thesis in our like student services in July, and until November I didn't have my viva, so it comes like a lot of months in the middle where you know nothing. So until you do your final exam and you have to defend your thesis. So that moment was like kind of lots of adrenaline. Because yeah, of course you have to external assessors and you have to defend your theories and everything. But at the end, it was like very good, especially receiving positive feedback and like almost no corrections. So yeah, it was very great. Now the thesis is getting published, so that's another job that I have for the next few months. So I'm getting a book out of it finally. I couldn't work on it before, but now, yeah, this is the spoiler.
All right.
So, so it's getting published, and hopefully the next year it go through becoming a book.
Very cool. And yeah, I share that same sentiment. When I finished my master's program and I turned in my dissertation, I'm just like, get this thing away from me. Get this
Yeah.
thing out of my life. I'm done. I'm done. So, very, very good. I want to piggyback off of something you mentioned earlier. Like when you were going through your program, I think you mentioned something about medieval Congress or something like that.
Yeah.
What is that? I mean, and how did that fit into your program?
So there are many conferences that people can do when they do PhD, especially in medieval history. There are two that are more important. One is done in Leeds here in the UK. It's called a Leeds Medieval Congress, and another one is in Kalamazoo in the US.
Kalamazoo, Michigan.
Yes.
Oh,
So
I'm from Michigan. I didn't realize we had that here. Okay
yeah,
then.
yeah, they did that. So I never been to the one in the US, but I've been to the one twice in the one in Leeds. So you have to prepare like, kind of like 1 year before. You have to find a sponsor, and then when you find a sponsor, then you apply for your paper to be reviewed. If they're okay, you can present like your paper to a conference. So it's the biggest conference for medieval studies worldwide. So you can expect like thousands of historians coming to the UK. It's like a very big event. It lasts like a kind of week. So they also give you like a book with all the papers that are getting presented. There are workshops, there is food, there are dancing. So usually there is a theme. So 1 year would be like feast in the medieval times. Another year could be like castles. I don't know. Well, there are more like serious theme, but for giving an example. So yeah, and so you have like a session. So I did both from two different sides. I presented a session for the people presenting. So I studied the paper and I present the people presenting, organize the session, and also present some of my works in 2 different years. So yeah, it was nice. It's a nice things you have on your CV. Also because not all the papers get accepted, so it's a very nice like qualification to have on your curriculum. And especially if you get like a sponsor. I remember the first year I got a sponsor from the Templars, so it was like, what? So you never know what sponsor you can get. So it was only when you receive the letter, I was like, oh, they really exist. So I was like, oh, that's nice. Um, so yeah, it was like very nice conference. But of course, there are lots of people that goes there for criticizing like researchers. So I saw like a lot of colleagues receiving very heavy critics or giving critics to other people that maybe they should keep them for themselves, like rather than saying in front of thousands of other listeners. So it's not nice, but it's quite famous for being like that. So I was super scared of presenting my research because like, oh no, a middle-aged man come to me, I will say something. But after actually didn't happen, so I was glad.
Well, it sounds like this conference is like pretty exclusive. You brought up the point that, not everyone who applies to have their paper presented there is going to get accepted, but ultimately yours did. So I would imagine that like they probably have pretty stringent like requirements that maybe you have to meet to submit a paper or present a paper or a compelling topic. I would assume. So it's just it would seem like hard to get in is kind of what I'm taking from this.
Yeah, it's not super hard, but you have to have like a network of people supporting you. So for example, you have to know someone that is organizing like a sessions where you want to present. So you have to present your like paper to them, and then if they accept that, it's okay. But sometimes like we received if you organize a session, you might receive papers from other scholars, and you have to decide if you want to take them on board or not. So in both cases, it's like quite hard to decide because you receive lots of applications. So you have to see what is the one that fits better with the team general in the conference and the one of the specific session. So I don't know, the specific session might be like traveling in Venice during this period, and I might be good, but someone else might apply, like even if it doesn't fit. So you say that, oh no, this paper is not. But yeah, in general, you had to respect like the general theme of the conferences, and then the second one that is the session you are organizing. So there might be like different scholar organizing different session, and if you have like a good network with other people studying around the world, so you know them from other conferences, or you maybe contacted them because you say, oh, I like your research, can we discuss it together, maybe it's useful to me as well. So it's good to have those people who you know, because you can organize a session, and or maybe it's easier that they know you already and can accept your paper as well.
So you mentioned that during this time you also got to travel to a couple of places, but the travel was predominantly for research purposes. But of course, you're a traveler just as well, just for like leisure, and you work in luxury travel just as well now too. But during this time, were you able to do very much in the way of personal travel, like just to take a vacation somewhere or have a holiday?
Well, yes, during the year, maybe not much. More in the summer, I was still like going to Sicily, staying there. Like it was summer, maybe writing from there, like my research, or going like for a week somewhere, like I don't know, in Europe, like Barcelona, or I don't know, like small islands in Italy as well. But yeah, it wasn't that like it wasn't frequent that I was taking like a proper holiday. So it was more for researching places or doing conferences. So not enjoying from this point of view, but still nice.
Did you by chance have a big like graduation vacation? I guess I'll say. I know I did when I turned in my dissertation at York. I did a week long like overland hike up in Scotland, and just because I wanted something just to kind of decompress from from what I just been through. Did you plan a graduation vacation as well?
Yeah. We've been to 1 month in Egypt, so it always been like a place that I want to visit. So we stay there like kind of for a long time. So we visit all the region, inclusive the one that needed like some special permissions. It was nice. So it is a place that I studied, of course, for my PhD as well. But I couldn't do like proper research there. Is quite kind of difficult. So it was nice to going for holiday anyway. So I want to return honestly, because Cairo is really, really beautiful. So yeah, I would like to return like for more days in that area as well.
Gotcha. Yeah, I need to get to Egypt myself. I'm an archaeologist, so I feel like Egypt is probably just like a place that has to be on my list to go
Yeah,
to throughout my
definitely.
lifetime. So yeah, maybe I should bump that up a little bit now that I'm thinking about it in this conversation. Uh, but now you work in luxury travel. How did you kind of sort of find that? I would suppose because I figured like with you like being a historian like we've been talking about that maybe you would probably have travel that caters more to that versus than just like luxury travel or maybe they're kind of blended in some way. I'm not sure, but yeah, how did you kind of sort of find yourself in that business?
It was I think before because of the pandemic. So before the pandemic, I was actually teaching at university. And when the pandemic came, of course, and I got also my children, I didn't know what road I wanted to take. So I needed some time to reflect if I wanted to keep teaching or like getting a postdoctoral degree, or I don't know. I didn't want to stay in research for that period. I didn't feel like it's something that I wanted to do, especially after pregnancy. I wouldn't do it. So I said like I need something else different that I like. So I like traveling as like a researching job in travel. And I found this one like in luxury travel. So it's kind of different word, honestly. So it doesn't fit that much with like my personal background or way of traveling, but it's still like a nice job to have. Now I am actually changing it, still in luxury travel, but different type. So instead of like proper travel, I'm going to luxury navigation, which is more related to my field of travel. And it's like cultural cruises. So it's something I really like. And it's like planning all those nice itineraries, reflecting like the proper way of travel, like exploring places. So which is kind of closer to my way of seeing holidays rather than just luxury hotels and like spending all your money in staying in fancy places without seeing nothing. But yeah, so it came kind of in the way while I was searching something different from academia. Uh, but yeah, still I like it, but not much as I travel myself, I would say.
Yeah, I definitely think there's definitely a time and place for the luxury travel, but to your point that you mentioned about that, yeah, if you just stay in the resort the whole time, you don't get to see like all the other amazing stuff that makes up the destinations that you're going to. And I was intrigued to talk to you about this because you probably might have seen from my Instagram, but my style of travel is like vastly different from that of the way of luxury travel. I'm in the woods. I'm, doing all this crazy stuff like, out in nature and just getting all primal and stuff, I guess I'll say. But there definitely is something to just being able to unwind a little bit, be really chill, be really relaxed. Luxury travel obviously provides that. And, that's what draws a lot of people to it, of course. And so, now with these like cruises that you're lining up, you're kind of talking about like having that blended like mixed. Are they going to be like based in Europe? Is that kind of where you're forming a lot of your itineraries?
Yeah, it's like kind of worldwide, but the type of cruises are like more focused on the cultural aspect. So they have like experts on board, like professors or scientists that will explain to you where you're going. They do lectures, and the itinerary is based actually on what you see. Like they're not like, I don't know, other cruises where you go and you do like, I don't know, parasailing or kayaking.
Right.
You might do those things, but they were related to some type of cultural experience. So you go visit places like archaeology excavations or like cities, and there is the expert explaining the history to you. So they are kind of different from this point of view. So I find this more interesting rather than just having fun, which is totally fine. I'm not against it, but from my personal perspective, I found it more interesting. So I'm closer to the way I travel. Because yes, of course you can. It's quite nice to stay in a resort and doing nothing for the whole week, but at the same time, it takes you away the possibility of experience a new culture as well. So when you say like, oh, I've been in Greece, but when you've been in Greece, you stay the whole time inside that hotel, you haven't seen anything from Greece. So that's kind of like limiting from my perspective.
Yeah, I agree. And I've taken a, I guess I'll say, for lack of better terms, conventional cruise a few years ago to the Bahamas. And definitely don't feel like I've gotten like an authentic cultural experience because the ports that we would, dock at, I could tell that all the locals there were just setting up everything just to cater to like, these
Have you
tourists
been
that are,
to Nassau? I've been
yeah,
to
yeah,
Nassau,
yeah.
and it was like whoosh.
Yeah, you can tell that they were all set up right there, or they had like senior frogs right there. And then again, like we've been talking about, not to knock, people's travel preferences if that's what they prefer, then definitely. But I would agree that it doesn't provide the most authentic cultural experience of the place if that's just as far as you go after the ship docks. And I remember, if I could tell this story here, that we docked in Freeport in the Bahamas, and I was with a friend, and we rented a Jeep, and we just drove further into the island rather than just staying at the port. And then we went to a national park. We had some conversations with some of the park rangers, and then they told us about like this woman who had like a small restaurant like right there too. So we went to her, and she made us burgers that was like locally sourced beef and everything right there on the island. And that stands out well in my mind because that was a very unique, I think, cultural experience, just kind of getting into the heart of the island away from all the touristy stuff, if that makes sense. So I like this idea that you're putting together where it's like, yeah, you're trying to make it deeper, I suppose, is probably the word I would use for, who you're creating these itineraries for on these cruises.
Yeah, so I think the guests of the cruise are people that they want to go a little bit further than just like having so much fun on the cruise, which you can have it as well, because there will be days where you navigate just on the sea, but they want really to experience places as you travel there, like for the first time with an expert rather than just being by themselves. So I find this very interesting, especially because you're not left alone exploring. You have always someone who knows the place and that can expect to like teach you about the place as well. So is that like an enriching cultural experience? So together with, of course, the leisure side of the cruise, which is nice.
So we are kind of talking in mid-May right now is when we're recording for this episode. Do you have any personal travel planned for the remainder of 2024?
Yes, so I'm going to Sicily in a couple of weeks. So I will stay there like for a week with my husband and the children. Then I will leave my children with the grandparents because they stay a little bit with them. And I'm going to South Korea.
South Korea. Okay. Is that going to be your first time in Asia?
No, but it's the first time I'm going South Korea. It's like on my bucket list since ages. I'm obsessed with Korean dramas. So yeah, it will be like a nice experience. So yeah, we plan the whole itinerary and it looks quite fun.
Where else in Asia have you been to? I'm intrigued because the only place in Asia I've been to up to this point is Japan. So I'm just kind of curious to see what some people's experiences are with traveling in Asia.
I've been to India and Jordan, which is technically still Asia. So yeah,
Right.
so
Yeah, and
my bucket list for Asia is still quite big, but I'm getting there.
yeah, there's so many places to see there, and I'm kind of perplexed myself as to where I would want to go next. Are you by chance like the type of traveler? I mean, of course, you mentioned you go back and forth to Sicily quite a bit because, well, that of course that's where you're from. You have family, and then of course, you want your children to spend time with their family just as well too. But I've always been kind of sort of particular about revisiting places that I've traveled to because I feel like if I spend money, time, and resources to go back to a place I've already been to, it's like, well, I feel like I could allocate those better to places I haven't been to yet. So I'm just kind of curious if like you have kind of a travel style where you like to go back to places that you visited previously.
I've been a couple of times in Greece, but not the same exact places. And of course, in Italy, I've been almost everywhere. So revisiting also places. Um, I can tell you from when I returned to Sicily, like now I feel it kind of different from when I used to live there. So when I used to live there, you take like some people for granted, so you never like fully experience it. But now that I go there, like as a tourist, I would say, so I just started paying attention to more like nice places to eat or like something to do that I didn't do like in my 20 years living there. So I think you can find always something that you never experienced before, or is it also yourself that is changed, so you are not the same person visiting, so you can see it with a different pair of eyes. So I think I'm up for revisiting places. Of course, I don't have enough time to do it. So every time it was like, oh, should I return that? No, I booked something new. So it never happened. Almost never. So I prefer like adding something new in the middle. Um, but of course, I think it could be fine if you really love a location and you want to return. Why not?
Yeah, absolutely. There are places for some people in the world where it's just like they find solace. I guess I will say like whether it's like a certain piece of property, a certain like natural national park or whatever the case may be. So definitely right on. And you brought up an interesting point that like as we go through life, we're always changing. We always have new experiences and we're always kind of evolving and changing. And then like when we go back and revisit a place, like in this case, we're talking about home effectively where we hail from, that we kind of have a different perspective of looking at it because we're not the same person now going back there than we were during the last time we visited. And it's funny that you mentioned that. I never thought about this before, but when I go back to Michigan, like I said, that's where I'm from. It does feel a little bit different, or I have like a certain appreciation for it because I live in San Antonio, Texas, which is a very, very populated city, very sprawled out, lots of heavy traffic. Well, that's kind of just Texas in general, too. We've had a pretty big population boom here over the past couple of years, but so it's a lot. So it's loud. It's a lot of hustle and bustle and stuff like that. But then when I go back to my childhood home, which is in a rural farm community, and my house is on a dirt road, I just love the silence. I just love the stillness and the slow pace of life because my experiences since I moved to Texas has been, go, 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 go. So I haven't thought about that before, but I appreciate that point because we are always going to be different people when we go back to places we've been to before.
Yeah, exactly. So, for example, yeah, here in London it's like go go go. When you come back to Italy, everything is super slow. They take ages for finishing your lunch. So I kind of appreciate more like those things that I didn't appreciate before. Like I don't know, my mom cooking like very late for lunch while here at 12 already finished everything and go back to work. There you sit at one, at three you're still on the table eating basically. So it's very nice like comparing those differences and appreciate them because I couldn't appreciate them before because they were part of my routine. So now they are just like moments that I can catch and memorize them. So it's nice.
And how has your travel style sort of changed? Of course, now that you have a family, like you said, you're a mom now. And so, like, what kind of sort of stuff would you think you'd like to do with your kids when it comes to like maybe traveling in the future, or maybe stuff that you have already done? I'm not sure how old your children are right now, but it's just like, yeah. So, where do you kind of see your children fitting in to your love for traveling and sharing that with them, of course?
So you already took with me traveling since they were 10 months old. Now they are almost 4. So we travel with them most of the year. Just once a year, I do like one trip with my husband and they stay with the grandparents. But all the rest of the year, I always take them with me when it's possible. I think I'm not the type of like mom that is super anxious about them like experiencing things. So I want them to do everything is possible. We take them with me, of course, in the limits of the dangerous.
Right,
So if
right,
I
of
know that,
course.
like for example, 2 years ago we went to Jordan. Of course, I felt that it wasn't the kind of holiday where they could get involved because they were still too little. I wanted to do canyoning, so it wasn't the right holiday for them. But if we go like around Europe or any holiday they can do like safely, of course we take them. So and I want them to experience as much as possible. So I don't plan exclusively like kids activities or like things that are we have to stay in the resort and they play on their own while we do our own holiday. So for example, we've been now for Easter we've been to France for 10 days. So I planned just the itinerary I wanted to do for myself and I involved them as well. So we've been to castles, we've been to like hiking, playing with the bikes. So they love it. They're still thinking about it. Every time they see a castle, I want to go to the castle. So yeah, it's nice. So it's changed. The style of my travel changed. So of course it become much slower because I have to use to. I have to stay with their rhythm. They are like taking ages for dressing up or like staying in a place more than normal. But it's nice as well because you kind of like slow down as well. You don't have that pressure like seeing everything in one day. So if we manage to do like some activities during the day, it's fine. So we're still in a new place and doing things. So it becomes like a nice memory for the whole family.
Well, not only does it create like fond memories, but in my opinion, and of course, I'm not a parent myself, so I can only speak through assumptions, I guess I'll say. But it has to be very, very good education for your kids to actually be able to have these experiences in the real world and see these places for themselves. Maybe interacting with the local culture, trying the food, seeing the buildings, and everything like that. Where travel to, like, let's say, Disney World is fun, and the kids are going to have a lot of fun. But I often wonder, it's like, what is being learned from like those types of environments? And again, not knocking to people who want to go to Disney World. I mean, shoot, I went there when I was a kid and I had a blast. But it's just I feel like the style of travel that you're talking about doing with your kids, I imagine that they're going to take a lot more out of those experiences than just fun. They're going to learn some stuff like from, like I said, that real world application, I suppose I'll say.
Yeah, I want them to be like open-minded and more used to the rhythms of travels because both me and my husband we are travel ourselves. So I travel a lot for work. He travels as well. I see like other friends' kids will get really traumatized when they change environment. Like even getting on a plane, they get nervous, they get crying, they don't want to stay outside. They like travel since they are like 10 months old, so they are used to this kind of type of like changes. They are like really excited to go on planes. They never cry. They like always like having fun. Now they are like a little bit biting each other, honestly, because they are twins. So they share the cars. They don't share the cars and they fight. But yeah, they really love like experiencing new things. Even if they are children and they don't fully understand what's happening, they like the new places and want to see things and want to try want to do activities. So it's nice to see how the holiday is evolving since they were little. So at the beginning, they were just staying with me in the backpack. And now they want to walk on their own and see things. So in France, they basically went on their own, like walking. I want to see this. I want to see this. So it was nice to see also what catch their interest.
Well, yeah, and then of course, traveling too is whether you're traveling by yourself or you're traveling with others, there's always like certain aspects that you have that kind of come into that. And a big one that I always say is problem solving, because Murphy's law is very real when it comes to travel. Like anything that can go wrong will go wrong. And I always say it's not a matter of if something happens, it's just a matter of when. But then, that's where we got to like, that's where problem solving comes in. And I think that's one thing that travel really instills. You just think about, okay, so flight got delayed or my passport went missing or whatever the case may be. And it's like, well, figure it out because, if you want to continue on with this, you got to figure it out. So I think there's a lot of life lessons to be learned just as well, too. And I'm sure you're going to pass that on to your kids as well.
Yeah. So of course, traveling, you get like some misadventures as well. So it might happen, especially when the kids like a couple of times happened that they fell sick during the trip. So we needed we had with us some medicines, of course, but or we lost one day because one child was sick. So, but you have to have like a plan B, and not get like, oh, I'm missing my day because my child is sick. Of course, it might happen. So it's like a different type of travel, and you have to like learn while you're traveling with them. So I remember when they were little, we were traveling in Portugal for quite a long time. One of them got like quite sick. He got a fever for 3 days. So we stopped traveling. I would just remain in the place until he was well. Um, so, but it can happen when children, especially when they're very little. So it's something you need to learn from as soon as you go on with it. So,
Yeah, definitely. So like at this point in time, and I didn't even think to check before getting on the call with you, but are you still like upkeeping your blog? You still kind of doing that and kind of sort of sharing your stories through that? Can you tell us?
yes, so I'm mostly blogging during the weekend. So it's now going like on a sort of like background that fits in my routine. So I don't always post like new things every week. So because I don't have much time, but it's still going on. So it's now a couple of years that I have the blog. It's now in a couple of years now that it's monetized. So it's not something that you do because you want the money from it. I started just for simple passion, and then it grew as soon as like I started publishing more things. So I usually publish twice a month, I would say, new articles. Of course, Instagram is a little bit different now because now it's more real based than photography as I used to like. So I publish some pictures here and there, but it's not as it used to be like a couple of years ago, which I preferred, honestly. I'm not a video person, but still going on, yes.
So would you by chance have any advice for someone who has a story to tell, but maybe they're a little bit nervous about putting their story like out there, and maybe in any medium? Of course, you are operating your blog. I'm sharing my story through spoken word, through my podcast, and everything like that. And of course, now your blog is at the point where you got a pretty good followership on Instagram, and like you said, you're at the point where you are monetizing your blog, so a lot of people are reading your stuff. Were you nervous at all at first about putting everything out there in your blog? Maybe wondering if, are people going to like it, or people are going to have criticism? Because I'm sure a lot of people maybe want to venture into doing kind of what you're doing or what I'm doing, and maybe they're nervous about that. So would you have any advice for anyone who maybe might be feeling that way?
I think that you should anyone should go for it if he feels that it's like his passion. When I started, I didn't expect that my blog was succeeding in any way. So I just started because I liked the writing. So I was like writing contemporary, doing my PhD. So I was documenting just my trip around, just posting pictures to show my family where I was. So I didn't expect anyone actually was interested in what I was writing or reading in any way. It was still 2017, so there wasn't that like Instagram and anything to share. It was still like very primitive from that point of view. I remember also I asked one of my colleagues, I was like, "Oh, would you like to write like a food section in my blog?" And she was like, "Who wants to read that?" So she didn't want to write. Now that I have like almost a million readers per year, I want to see if she wants to write for it. I say no. So yeah, it's like kind of things that takes time. So it's not that you gain readership immediately, or I don't think anyone should be scared of saying anything, of course, in the limits of what you can say that is not like offensive anyway.
Sure.
So I think that if it's your passion to write and talk about places, you should go for it. Of course, the better thing is being original and not being like copycats. I have a lot of copycats, honestly, and it's quite annoying because I take lots of time for writing my article, and when I see them just copied and like change with the artificial intelligence, I get really mad. I think it's not quite correct, especially for bloggers who I have a lot of friends bloggers who put really their soul when what they write, and they recently have been stolen like articles from other people. So you have to go through Google and tell them that it's like copyright infringement. It's a lot of hassle, but it's nice, and I think in the long term it pays off. So you have to keep constantly keep it alive just because you have the passion for it, and maybe something comes from. So yeah, just follow the passion and see where it goes.
Well, the interesting thing about people is that everyone has their own story to tell, and their story is unique because no one else's story is quite like theirs. I mean, there could be some similarities and overlap, but you know, everyone has their own unique story, and of course, and no one else can tell it better than the person themselves. I mean, like, you're based in London or around London, as you kind of pointed out, and of course, I've been there as well. I mean, there's no doubt you and I have been to the same places, whether it's the Tower of London, Buckingham Palace, or wherever the case may be. But it's just, your perspective of the place is going to be different than mine, and everything like that. So it's like you and I could write about the same place, but it's going to be two totally different perspectives.
Yes,
So
of course.
so I think that's probably another thing for people to consider is that if that there's stuff that you can talk about that hasn't been talked about like many times over already by someone else, but your story is unique in that front. And I think that's kind of where we lead from when you're talking about like being real and authentic and things like that.
Yes, I think that one good thing of blogging is that there is often like a different perspective. So that you when you see all those articles that are the same, it's because people are copying each other. So when you find someone that is different and still rank high, it means that it's like an authentic piece of blog. So and you can do it because it's not something that Google penalize. So in the research, so you can be authentic and say what you think about that place in the most honest way, and people still read it. So of course you have always to remember that it's your opinion, and it doesn't mean that it's the absolutely true about a place. So you can really love a place and you can really hate it, but of course you always say like, this is my opinion, my experience, and of course yours can be completely different. So for example, there is this place I've been in the Netherlands, I really didn't like it, and there was someone replying to my blog and said, I had the best experience, I'm not sure why you ate it so much. I was like, of course you had the best experience, but I didn't. So that's my opinion. So it doesn't mean the place is terrible. I'm saying just I didn't have that experience. So yeah.
Yeah, it just is what it is sometimes. All right. Well, we are coming up on an hour. So to start winding us down, another thing I ask all my guests when they come on the podcast is to issue a challenge to our listeners, because we got to hear some stories from you. We got to get some insights from you. But as I always say, is that stories, ideas, insights, they're just potential to actually go out and do amazing things in life. We have to take action. So with that, what challenge would you issue to our listeners today for them to go out there and start living a more adventurous life?
I think that as an historian, I always say a search for history. I think that we are surrounded by history anywhere in the world. So one challenge could be like find that history, and you will discover something new about even the place you have in front of your house. You never know who belonged. You never know the people who live there, the history that is in that house. It could be something very interesting, and it could be something you say, "Oh, I look at this place with different eyes now that I know this history." So find the history of places, discover what they came from, how they changed through times, and this will enrich the holidays.
I think that's a first to come up on the podcast, Laura. I don't, I've asked this question many times over, but I don't think anyone's discussed that yet. So very good, very good.
Thanks.
All right. So what I have for you next is my final three. Again, these are questions that I ask all my guests at the end of the show. And I like to think that they're fun questions, but I'll leave that up to you once you get asked these. And the first of these three questions is, what is your favorite place that you've been to so far?
Um, well, I don't have. I have many favorite places, but the one that I really loved it was Cairo. I know it's like a place that many people don't like, but I simply loved it because it was literally walking into a museum. Everything was like centuries old. The market was feeling like a different era, and it was right really unbelievable. Everything. I think I didn't stop taking pictures all the time. And it's really really fascinating. The historical part of Cairo is like, oh well, they especially the Islamic part where all the mosques and the ancient markets are is so beautiful. But yeah, of course I have also many other places I like, but this is one I really want to return.
Did you get to haggle with a lot of the vendors in the marketplace when you were buying things?
Yeah, yeah. So I think it's like kind of the most interesting part you can do because it's like they are prepared for doing this, so they purposely tell you a price that you don't want to pay. So and it's kind of fun as well. So they are always like nice people.
Yeah, I'm curious to see that side when I go to Egypt because I've been to a couple of places and a couple of souks and markets where I've had to do that, like in Morocco. When I
Yeah.
was in the Gambia and West Africa, I had to do that. I also had to do that in the souks in Dubai as well. And it's kind of funny. There's a certain level of, I guess I'll say, assertiveness or maybe even aggression between some of the different
Oh yeah.
vendors, depending on where I go. I would have to say that so far, the vendors in Dubai were probably the most aggressive. Like I'm walking through the souk and they're actually putting garments like on me as I'm walking to try to get
Oh
me to
wow.
come like look in the mirror and everything like that. And and of course the mirror's in their shop, and so they're gonna put me around all their other goods too. So now I'm actually kind of curious to see what they're like in Cairo. And well, I guess the only way for me to really find out is to go there, right?
Yeah, so I think they're also in Jordan. They are quite pretty aggressive. Near Petra, all the shops. I remember I wanted to buy like a plushy camel for the kids, and the guy was, "Oh, this is £100." I was like, "What? No, no way! I'm gonna buy it." So yeah, so it's kind of like they tell you the prices that you're not gonna pay for anything like magnets, £50. Like, oh no, thanks.
Very cool. All right. So the next question that I have in the final three is, what is one thing on your bucket list that you have yet to do?
Oh, yeah, I wanted to do the Silk Road. So I know that part of it is not possible to do it now, but yeah, it's something that I really want to do. It's like traveling the Silk Road. So basically, Uzbekistan at the moment is high on my list. So I hope I can plan a trip there, and maybe also the other countries. Things will come down in the future.
That's definitely a first to come up on the podcast, Laura. And Uzbekistan, like that whole region of the world is kind of mysterious because anytime I hear about people traveling anywhere in the world, it's like that those countries right there almost never come up. So Yeah, now you got the gears turning in my head. Maybe I should take a closer look at that part of the world myself and see what it's like, because it seems like it's like, cause like everyone else just wants to kind of like not venture out that far. I suppose I'll say.
Yeah, it's not as popular as it could be, and I hope it stays like that. Honestly, because I don't like that it might turn like another like Dubai or something like that. There are a lot of sites, but they have very good train connection, so you basically can go around the country with the train. So you don't need like to rent a car or anything. So it seems like a very good place to start like a Silk Road trip. Of course, I don't know, Syria, other places that are still not super safe to go.
Mm.
There are some specific tours that you can do, but it's still like I'm not 100% sure I will take that at this moment. But in the future, 100%, if the situation improves and tourism open up again, I will definitely put them on my list as well.
All right, awesome. And the last of these three questions, and this is a two-parter. What is your favorite animal, and have you seen this animal in the wild?
Ooh, yeah. I like dolphins. I saw them in the wild. I saw them in Florida actually. So they were swimming there, but I saw them also other places. Also in Sicily, there are dolphins sometimes. I like them. I don't have like a really favorite animal, but dolphins is like quite nice to see, especially because they are quite playful when they see people with the boat. They try to follow. Uh,
Yeah, I've noticed that too, and it doesn't really matter the size of the water vessel either. They'll still follow. Like I was in the military, and I've actually sailed on aircraft carriers before, and yeah, this big thing in the ocean, and dolphins are going to swim right alongside it. It's really cool. So awesome. All right, well, Laura, that's it. That's all the questions that I have for you today. But before we wrap this up, let's just go over how our listeners, or if we have viewers watching another video on YouTube, how can they connect with you? So you got the blog out there. You said you're about to get some published work done, and then of course you're putting together a luxury travel itinerary. So yeah, how can we reach out and connect with you?
from my blog in thehistoriantraveler.com or through Instagram at thehistoriantraveler.
Okay. All right. And I'll get everything linked up in the show notes for this episode. Or if, like I said, if viewers are watching on YouTube, it'll be down in the description below. They can just go click and find everything. All right. Well, Laura, or as I'll say officially, Dr. Stefano, I want to thank you very much for taking the time for joining me today. And like I said, you and I, we've been connected on Instagram for a good while now. So I'm glad that we were able to have this discussion and get this collaboration going. This was a great conversation.
Thanks, Josh. Thanks for the podcast. It was very nice.
All right. Right on.